And here it is. I think this is the future of PC gaming, really. Still going though, I am surprised at that. Oh, I'm gonna blow it, I'm gonna blow it! I blew it! Hello everybody! Today we're back with another graphics card review, and I'm feeling good about this one. I haven't actually reviewed a Gigabyte card ever, so this will be a first for me. It's got a bit of a long name if you call it its official title. This would be the Gigabyte NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3060 Ti Gaming OC Pro 8G. And the doorbell's going to...
Someone's at front door.
Someone's at the door. Allow me to introduce you to Zen, the brand new way to shop smart. Zen is an online shopping account that makes your life easier, safer, and more convenient. Right off the bat, any purchase that's made with your Zen MasterCard gets a whole year of additional warranty when it comes to mechanical breakdown. So if you're in the unfortunate position where you buy a new graphics card and it stops working a couple of days after the manufacturer's warranty expires, then you're not out of pocket. But as we all know, making the purchases themselves isn't always that simple. Stores are located all over the world and in different currencies, which usually means fees, and more fees. Not so with Zen, as there's no currency conversion fees, you don't pay any transaction surcharges, just the MasterCard exchange rate. And hey, maybe you like your euros, your pounds, your dollars. You can hold them all in separate accounts and then save or spend them as you see fit. Unfortunately, there are also times that you just don't get the product you expected, and it's usually quite difficult to get your money back. Zen helps to take care of all of the disputes for you, smoothing the process and returning your money as quickly as possible. You can spend with both Apple and Google Pay, and thanks to both virtual and physical cards, it's now easier to see your spend across online and brick and mortar stores, not to mention the added security of never being able to lose a virtual card. There are so many glorious reasons to check out Zen and make your life easier. Learn a little bit more with that link down below. So ultimately, here's the situation, you see, because RTX 3060 Ti's are very good cards, but they tend to get sort of, I guess, a little bit stuck in between that 3060 and 3070 pricing. And the last couple that I've seen have sort of got a little bit close to that 3070 Founders Edition in terms of price. How much is this one going to cost? I'm not entirely sure. It should be around about £400. Quick bit of disclosure on this one. While this video is completely independent, they have sent this card out with the intention of doing some advertising next year. So just bear that one in mind. Not too much really to it in the box, just a quick start guide, no support bracket or anything, but you shouldn't really need that in this sort of price range. Anyway, just the card itself, and here it is. So my first Gigabyte card of the Ampere series, and it doesn't look too different to the classic Gigabyte design, I guess. You've got that usual 3-fan WindForce design here. You've got some cool little marks on the fans as well. Not sure if this helps with cooling or just makes it look a little bit better. This is a 2.5 slot card, so be careful if you're going to put this in a slimmer chassis or anything ITX really. But otherwise, there's not really too much to it. It's not going to be like a Strix card, which I think in this price point would be pretty silly. Anyway, as I mentioned in that review, it's not the heaviest thing in the world, but it's still pretty strong. There's not really that much to it, no special features. Most notably being in terms of the I/O, it's not like one of the Asus cards where you get an extra slot. But interestingly enough, we have two HDMI 2.1s here and then two display ports. So I think this is probably the right combination for most people. But if you do want to use 3 G-Sync DisplayPort monitors, this is when you're going to have to look at something else or use adapters. On the top of the card, you have GeForce RTX etched quite neatly, not really any disruption, I guess, there. You've got a Gigabyte logo, which looks to me like it's got some RGB underneath it. You have an 8-pin and then a 6-pin, so not crazy powerful, but more than you'd get on the Founders Edition, but of course you don't have to use one of those horrible alien adapters. And then everything else really is just blocked out. There's not really too much to report. You do have a backplate on the back, which is pretty nice. You've got a little bit of ventilation here like you have on the Founders Edition, so it should do something fairly similar by sort of blowing air through and out the top of the case, but not really to the same extent, I guess. I'm expecting cooling to be very good on this thing, but the thing is, the base 3060 Ti Founders Edition is really good and doesn't really need to be improved upon that much, so it'll be interesting to see how this performs and whether it cuts the mustard. My test rig is getting dusty. It's been a while. Before we actually put this in our system though, I should give you a little comparison against the Founders Edition, and as you'd expect, the Founders is actually a fair bit smaller. This is to be expected from a 2-fan rather than a 3-fan card. This is of course 2-slot as well rather than the 2.5 on the Gigabyte card. But the most notable change is that I/O, because you will find 3 display ports on this, but then only 1 HDMI, whereas we have 2 for 2, as we've already mentioned, on the Gigabyte card, which is actually pretty important to remember. You get high off of this smell though, of this box. Like, you are missing out on that Founders Edition smell. I'm not making this up. This box smells amazing. Unlike me, as it's actually got quite warm in this room now, and I'm wearing a jumper, so I'm gonna smell great. And I wish that was a joke, I really do. Let's open up our slot though and actually get this thing installed. Ready for the noise? Oh, that was rubbish. Let's try that again. Oh yeah, that's better. So as you can see, it's a pretty like middle of the road graphics card, I guess. It doesn't really do anything particularly different, but it's very inoffensive. I still think it looks pretty good. It would be nice if we did have a little bit more lighting, but I mean, that would bring up the cost, and at this sort of price point, I wouldn't say that's really money well spent. But otherwise, you know, not really too much to report. This is quite a small case for ATX as well, and you can see there's plenty of room here, but it is a little bit wider than a standard ATX motherboard. Oh, we're gonna have to get rid of the flowers now. We're gonna have to get rid of the flowers, they won't fit. I was getting in touch with my feminine side. Oh, they smell good as well. We'll grab me 4K LG monitor. Let's fire this baby up. Let's fire this baby up. I still thought I wasn't gonna do it then. So yes, in terms of RGB, it's not really got that much going for it, just the logo here. So otherwise pretty much as we expected. I don't know how expensive it is to add RGB actually, that is a very good question. Let's begin our testing with Forza Horizon 4, and this is one of the few games you'll be able to run in 4K without too much hassle. So this is actually 4K ultra settings, and we're getting around about 110 frames a second, which for me is incredibly impressive, because when you compare this to a next-gen console, Forza Horizon sort of caps out at around about 60 frames a second at max settings on the Series X. So to be able to beat that on what is meant to be a £369 graphics card, this one of course will be a little bit more expensive, it is really impressive in my eyes. I think this is the future of PC gaming really. We've sort of been wanting graphics cards that can, I don't know, do everything that we actually want them to be able to do without costing a load of money for years. But this is the first generation where we can actually see that. And yes, this isn't going to be the same in every single game that you play, but the fact of the matter is they are really flexible. To prove the point with the whole 4K situation, you can see here we have high settings on Crysis Remastered, and we're currently getting around about 37 frames a second. And this doesn't take into account the fact that games are using more and more video memory, so you might find that even though you have the horsepower for certain games, if you want all of the settings and textures turned up to max, you just might not be able to do it. Alternatively then, you are much better off playing at this resolution, which is 1440p. It does seem to be the perfect pairing. And while this game is a little bit strangely demanding, not entirely sure why a game this old would be that demanding, but there you go, hey ho, we've got around about 65 frames a second, which is pretty much double what we had before. And I would say that actually running at 1440p is going to be the sweet spot, and is pretty much what a card like this is really geared for. Because in those games that do require, I don't know, a little bit more horsepower, shall we say, and you do run at around about 60 frames a second, maybe run ray tracing for example, then it's still sharp enough that you can properly enjoy that image. But then in games maybe like Apex or anything competitive where you do have more frames a second, then you get the benefits of that smoothness and you can play games more competitively. So again, it's a very flexible card this. And you know what, we haven't actually talked about thermals or noise or anything yet. And I guess that's partly because it's really good actually. I was a little bit worried, to be honest with you, that this would either be a card that's too expensive or a little bit too loud. But actually, to my ears, it does seem to perform a little bit better than the Founders Edition, which is very good news. Hold that thought though, let's actually test out Apex at 1440p, max settings. And it looks like as we're dropping into a very heavy area, we're getting around about 110 frames a second. I usually expect this to increase a little bit as we start running around. Outside, we're getting around about 110, 120 frames a second, but we're also getting a little bit of heat. I'm not very good at this. Do I have another gun? That's one, that's one. Come on, my son. Come on, my son. Oh, I'm gonna blow it. I'm gonna blow it. I blew it! But let's talk thermals though, and over the case fans, not really anything to report, to be honest with you. Here's my classic sound test. Very, very good, actually, very good. Not really any louder than the Founders Edition, probably a little bit quieter, to be honest with you. Obviously, that is to be expected with 3 fans, but the most impressive thing is that the GPU temperature is around about 60 degrees, and that definitely is a fair bit lower than we saw on the Founders Edition. So, as long as you're happy to go with a longer design, I'd say that actually, I'd rather have, I was going to say the Windforce, but it's not actually called that, the Gaming OC 8 gig over the Founders. Oh, they've revived me and I'm going to have to quit. Sorry. It wouldn't be an RTX video though without checking out the ray tracing performance. Here we're using Watch Dogs Legion, a game that actually has a really good little benchmark, and it shows off all of the RTX effects, I think. Probably the best out of anything, even Cyberpunk to be honest. So you can really see what we're going to get. And in terms of frame rate, I mean, this is 1440p with DLSS, which is going to give you the best performance, but we're still running at around about 50 frames a second or so, which for me personally, with the controller, to be honest, is going to be fine. But even so, it's a game that you can customize. You don't have to have the ray tracing on Ultra, but as you can see here from all of these lovely reflections, it does look pretty good. I think it's a great implementation of all of the RTX features. Just not very efficient on VRAM. AMD fanboys in the background be like, but then NVIDIA fanboys be like, yeah, but where's your DLSS? Where is it, huh? Where? Shall we come back down to planet Earth now? It's time to hand you over to the one, the only, Benchmark Marcus! Yeah! I haven't been to a football game in a long time. Can you imagine me there? Like, yay! In the background. Real men live there. Well, what an introduction. I don't really know how to respond to that. You know, take care of yourself, mate. You seem to be going a little bit funny there. But anyway, I'm here to bring you guys the numbers, the hard stuff, the lovely figures. And it's a little bit weird with this card because it's both impressive in terms of its thermals and its acoustics, but then I'm not entirely sure why the clock speed seems to be slightly lower than the Founders, even though it's rated to be slightly higher. And exactly what that translates to in terms of real world performance is slightly less performance, and nothing that I think you'd be able to notice, and you are going to have some overclocking headroom as we'll talk about a little bit later. But it is a little bit weird that you're still paying slightly more for almost slightly less performance. But personally, I would probably rather have the Gigabyte card because it is quieter and you can get more performance out of it if you're willing to overclock. But for those of you that want something that looks really pretty, that you can just slot in and know you're getting the best performance, Founders Edition might be a fair shout, but you know, it's gonna be entirely up to you. I don't think either's a right or wrong decision. There you go then, huh? Not too shabby at all. Very similar to the Founders Edition, as we of course expected. But I mean, for just a little bit more money to get something that's a bit quieter, runs a little bit cooler as well, performs, you know, about the same, not too bad. But you probably want to know about overclocking, as if there is headroom in this, it's something you'll be able to access. Let's start by actually having a look at what we get at base, which is around about 1905. So nothing extraordinary. It is meant to boost a little bit better than the Founders Edition, but I think in practice you're going to see pretty similar results between the two, to be honest with you. Obviously use whichever software floats your boat. I'm sure Gigabyte would love for me to promote their Gigabyte one, but I use EVGA Precision, to be honest. But yeah, let's just raise the power target to 113. Memory we can go up to around about 50 normally, and then we'll just see how far we can boost that clock. So immediately you can see that GPU boost has gone all the way over 2000 now, so we're pretty much going to be into, what, about 3070 performance-ish? Probably still slightly less, but I mean, it's going to get close, right? Interestingly, in terms of noise and thermals, it's not really doing anything different. It seems to like to hover around about the 60-degree mark. So if you did want to change the fan profile a little bit, you could get it even quieter, run it at around about 70 degrees like you see on that 3060 Ti Founders, and then have a really nice quiet system, which is probably what I would do, but it is entirely up to you, of course. We go for around about 134. That brings us all the way up to 2070 megahertz, which is pretty nice, to be honest with you. Let's push it a little bit further though. Let's go for 187, which, to be honest, I'd be surprised if it works. Such a good looking game though, such a good looking game. I feel like if you haven't actually played Far Cry 5, it's a really good time to get into it because you'll be able to play the game quite cheap. Still going though, I am surprised at that. Let's try 198. Basically, we'll see if we can get it to 2100. There we go, we've just hit it. Haven't crashed just yet. Oh, there you go, right on cue. So around about, what, 2060, 2070 megahertz is probably a good target. But again, depending on the game that you're playing, I wouldn't really want to risk it too much. Which quite nicely brings us on to the conclusion, which is a lot better than the Strix review, which was just ridiculously overpriced. Don't buy that card unless the price comes down. With this, it's a very different story. I'm told the RRP of this is $399, which I'm gonna believe, but in terms of actually availability pricing, I mean, you know, you'll be able to tell me better than me, because at the moment it's just out of stock everywhere. So if you can get this for a very reasonable, very similar to Founders Edition price, fantastic, go for it. If you're looking at, you know, 3070 money, then don't do it. Or if you're looking and nothing is available and you're going to have to pay extortionate prices, unless you really need a graphics card for some sort of emergency reason that's going to, you know, like maybe make you some money, then I would just wait a little bit, which isn't a very nice thing to say, and I'm sorry it has to be like that, but like that it has to be. A massive thank you, that camera is off. I would absolutely love to hear from you on this one though, especially when you compare this to the Founders Edition. Do you think that this is actually a very good price proposition and its RRP? If you do want to check out current pricing, by the way, you can find all the information you need down in that description below with my Amazon affiliate links. Absolutely smash that like button, because it will break if you hit it hard enough, I promise. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next one.